ladies, it's the Beauty Shaman, and I'm here today with a guest I'm very excited about. Her name is Justine Lemos, and she is a PhD and Ayurvedic practitioner. And she's going to talk about how to use nutrition and herbs to have beautiful skin and hormone balance. Thank you for joining me, Justine.
You're welcome. I'm super happy to be here.
Thanks. And I love what you kind of bring to the table with health and nutrition and skin. And just so the audience knows the history with you and I did your makeup for a on-camera presentation that you did. We're not going to talk about with whom because they get irritated if I do that. But anyway, it was really great. I got to spend 3 days. Was it 3 or 4?
3 or 4, I think 3.5, something like that.
Something like that, yeah, something like that together. And it was long days and it was very hard. But at the same time, it was great because I got to really get to know you. And when I first started doing your makeup, I said, and I remember this, I was like, oh my God, your skin is amazing. What are you doing? And you were like, nothing, which isn't true because you just don't do a lot topically. You do a lot with diet and nutrition. And we spent that time together really talking about nutrition and health. And you gave me so much great free advice. You were so generous. And I walked away going, this is a really important subject. And I really want to share this with my viewers. So maybe you could explain a little bit for those who don't know about Ayurveda and just a little bit of history, just something so they have something to go on here.
Definitely. So Ayurveda is a holistic system of wellness. It has its origins in ancient India, but it has vast application for our contemporary life. I always like to say that though Ayurveda comes out of a vast tradition, it's constantly evolving and we're constantly learning new things that can be applied in an Ayurvedic framework to make us more healthy, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. So when we approach skin, for example, we're always looking at what are the causative factors? What is the origin of what's going on in the skin? And we never would simply look at the superficial reality of what is manifesting on the face or in the skin. For example, if the skin is erupting with a lot of acne or boils or kind of blemishes, well, we wouldn't just put a lot of stuff topically on the skin. We might do some work topically, but we would look at the underlying imbalance in the tissues and in the digestion that's causing this to happen. And then we'd work from the inside out to bring balance to the body. Of course, we might work from the outside in as well, so that we see some results happening right away, but we'd want to resolve the underlying imbalance for what's causing it. Because if we just put something topically on the skin, it might clear up what's going on a superficial level, but only in the short term. So we really want to see long-term balance and long-term health throughout all the tissues, and our skin is one layer of those tissues. And through examining the skin, we can begin to learn a lot about what's going on internally in the body.
Yes, and I love this because you're not going the chemical route. You're really using, you talked about skin erupting. Okay, I have teenagers. So, in the past, they would be given different chemicals. And I think probably viewers can relate to this. Doctors automatically say, take this chemical. I took that when I was a kid, and I have had stomach problems my whole life because it actually took out a lot of my good flora. And until I figured that out, I didn't know to replace it. So it can have long-term effects if you go, if chemicals can. They're not all bad, obviously, but some of it. So with Ayurveda, you really are using natural means and foods and holistic items in order to have a long-term effect.
Right. And let's just look at the example of skin eruptions because acne is such a pervasive problem.
Right.
So skin eruptions are generally speaking, from heat in the body and or dryness in the body, what we call an imbalance of pitta dosha or vata dosha. Generally speaking, there can be other things as well. But the doshas are these intelligences in the body. They're what allow the body to maintain homeostasis. And when one of these doshas gets imbalanced, gets to be too big, gets to have too much of it, like too much heat in the body, pushing from, say, the energy of the liver or the energy of the stomach, will have eruptions on the skin. Now, in Western medicine, oftentimes the what's it called, the cure for this, for acne, would be to give an antibiotic or a steroid. Now, the if you've ever tasted, like if you put an antibiotic in your mouth, an antibiotic pill, and don't just swallow it, the taste on your tongue is incredibly bitter. It's incredibly, incredibly bitter, like that taste in your mouth. And the bitter taste conveys coolness to the body. So that's why the antibiotic works. It's transmitting intelligence to the body. The problem with the antibiotic is it does overwhelm the gut bacteria and then create a cycle of more difficulty down the road. But if we can communicate that same intelligence to the body, that bitter taste, which is cooling, via herbs or via nutrition, by, we can communicate the bitter taste by increasing our greens, which is something we'd frequently do with someone with acne. Increase that bitter taste, transmit some cool information to the body, not in terms of frozen food, but in terms of the taste of the food, the bitter taste, bitter and astringent taste. And then we have the same result as taking the antibiotic without the side effects of having in that artificial and chemical substance.
Right. And you brought up, so you're bringing up gut, which is great, because gut really is the key, right? This is the key to everything. Correct me if I'm wrong, is gut health. And not only for your skin, but we were also addressed in the intro, I talked about hormones, which is something we get into. And you love working with women on their hormones. And it's one of your specialities, which I adore because it's one of my favorite topics since my hormones started going, is how to balance our gut health with our skin, anti-aging, and the hormone balance. So it all really works together. So maybe you could just talk about the gut and share some of your knowledge about this with these subjects.
Sure. So in Ayurveda, we say that the origin of many diseases lies in the digestive fire. Of course, there are cases where it doesn't. And in fact, there are many cases where, emotional health can be as important as our gut health. But the energy of the digestion, when we digest food, and actually I just heard a very interesting story that was on NPR about microbes in the gut, and what they were talking about was so similar. It was a scientific perspective about what we've always known with Ayurveda, but how they were specifically talking about the gut microbes and what they do, and how we need to have the specific gut microbes, and it was just amazing. But when we digest food, if our digestion is not strong enough, we'll have undigested matter. And that undigested matter is what we call ama in Ayurveda. And it travels on the bloodstream and it clogs up various parts of our body. This is why disease becomes chronic. We might injure our knee. Say we injure our knee playing sports. Well, the knee should heal, but sometimes it becomes a chronic injury and we just can't get rid of the pain. That is because that ama, that undigested matter, travels through the body and gets clogged wherever there's weakness or wherever there's injury. So oftentimes we have to strengthen our digestion and release the ama that has been accumulated. And one of my favorite ways to release ama and strengthen digestion is so simple, and it's so good for our skin. It's sipping on hot water throughout the day. So this isn't guzzling like gallons of water. And frequently I find that Americans sometimes are drinking too much water. We think that more water is better, but if you think about it, our digestion has a certain amount of enzymes in it. And if we dilute them all out, they become weaker. And then we put a bunch of food in the stomach and the digestion is too weak to process it. So, what they've always said, 8 ounce glasses of water a day, that's plenty. But if it's very warm, not scalding, you don't want to burn your tongue, but warm or hot water sipped throughout the day every 20 minutes, just taking a couple of sips, not guzzling it, just a couple of sips. Now, what this does is it stimulates your tongue. When the tongue is stimulated, the digestion begins to work. And if there's not a lot of food in the digestive tract because it's between meals, then the digestion burns up all of this undigested matter. It clears out the digestive tract very easily, very naturally, and then we see the results on the skin. The skin becomes smoother. The skin becomes brighter. The skin, we lose blemishes, we lose discolorations and things like this on the skin throughout the body. So the hot water routine is one of my favorite simple mechanisms for strengthening digestion. Also, it can be used in weight loss if there's excess weight in the body.
Now, what about adding lemon to it? Is that helpful or not?
Yeah, it definitely can be helpful. One of the great Ayurvedic Vaidya's or doctors, he said, well, you don't wash your clothes in lemon water. So just plain water is best, right? Because there's no need to really add anything to it.
Right.
That said, I didn't really talk much about hormones, so I'd like to talk a little bit about
go for it. Yes, absolutely.
I kind of got off topic.
Oh, that's okay.
But when our hormones change in our body, all of our imbalances come out. And this is because estrogen makes everything nice. Estrogen makes everything, it's very soothing to all of the tissues of the body. And as our estrogen starts to drop, all of a sudden, we notice the skin may grow drier. We may start having hot flashes. We may start having early morning wakings, dry eyes, dry mouth. What are some of the other kind of typical symptoms that women experience at that time of life?
This is a huge one. Waking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Early morning wakings between 2 and 4 a.m. This is very, very, very common. Now, what's happening? Yeah, weight gain can also happen. Now, what's happening is that we always had these imbalances. We just couldn't tell because we had estrogen covering those imbalances. So all of a sudden, the estrogen comes down and those imbalances flare up, or the symptoms of those imbalances flare up. Now, a lot of them come together as a package and are related to what we call liver heat in Ayurveda. The energy of the liver grows too hot. And that usually groups together with early morning wakings between 2 and 4 a.m., hot flashes, reddening of the skin, and these are an imbalance of what we call Ranjaka Pitta. We'll see it earlier in the life, often with acne in teenage years. And this is all because the energy of the liver is too hot. And the common things that cause this liver heat is taking alcohol. In America, it's very acceptable to take alcohol. And even if you drank kind of casually in your 20s, a glass of wine every night or something, and then your 30s left, and then all of a sudden, say you stop drinking, well, that liver heat is still there. And it takes a long time to get rid of the heat. Also, environmental pollution and toxins puts a lot of heat on the liver. So we see that a lot of people have imbalances of the liver, even if they aren't doing things that are liver imbalancing. And we have so many natural remedies that we use to balance the energy of the liver. One of the things that we often use is an aloe juice, a specific aloe juice that is taken. We have to kind of work with the individual to make sure it's taken right. But think about the property of aloe juice. It's cool and it's very soothing. Aloe juice is known in Ayurveda as the replenisher of women's reproductive organs. And So think about the properties of having a hot flash. Well, it's hot, it's sudden, it's volatile, it's explosive. Think about the opposite properties of aloe. So we're using the opposite to make change inside the body. And really, at its basis, this is the very simple beauty of Ayurveda. We're using like properties to increase likeness in the body. We're using opposite properties to decrease those symptoms in the body. Just like if the skin is getting very wrinkled, very dry, that shows me that the skin needs more oil, both from the inside and from the outside. And so usually topically on the skin, we'll use oils, and sometimes we'll use milks, or like making poultices of oatmeal or other grains and herbs, and we dip them into milk, very fresh milk, and apply them onto the skin. Very, very soothing for the skin, and can be used for skin that is more dry or has more vata qualities, for skin that is more hot, red, flushed, prone to pimples, or has pitta qualities, and then skin that is oily, which has more kapha properties like that. So we just have so many methods that we use to create balance from the inside and from the outside.
So let's take that into a little bit of hormonal stuff, because you did talk about hormones, but what would you say to somebody like me? Okay, so I struggle with my hormones. So what maybe you could give an idea of someone who's, you know, in their 50s, they're having hot flashes. So what would you say to them to start doing?
So the first thing, you know, is we need to assess what are the causative factors that are causing this imbalance to maintain its, you know, hold on the body. Is there alcohol being taken? If there is, take it all out.
Right, right. To
Are you
remove
taking
stuff.
are you taking a lot of garlic?
Uh,
If not you specifically, but is one taking a lot of garlic? Now, garlic is so heating. And it, you know, think about biting a clove of garlic or like chewing it up inside the mouth. It's so hot we have to spit it out, right? And so often, just by removing all garlic from the diet, women will see a decrease in hot flashes. Um,
what about creams and stuff? Like I'm thinking we're going to change our diet, but do you ever recommend like hormonal creams like estriol and estrogen, like things like that? Or is it mainly, no, we can do this all with food. We can do this with removing stuff and adding stuff, or, you know?
So usually not just with food, but with food, with herbs, with lifestyle routine. If the client is really willing to make the effort to make those shifts. If they're not, then I won't recommend specific hormones, because, you know, I'm not an MD, but I can always work with someone who is using hormones or using hormone creams to work with some portion of that and some portion of Ayurveda to find the right balance for you. And I'm completely non-judgmental. Like, I want everyone to find their own balance and to find their own pathway. So if someone decides to use hormones, I talk to them about like the risks of hormone replacement therapy and why they might not be beneficial later in life. But, you know, I'm completely open as myself, as person. There are Ayurvedic practitioners who are more kind of hardline and just want to work with herbs and just want, but I know that that's not right for everybody. So I always want to find what's right for you.
So it sounds like you really do go per patient, and you really, I mean, I know from being with you that you really tune in, that you really listen, you're an amazing listener, and you really find out what's going on here with this person. And some of the advice you gave me, I was like, yeah, I'm totally doing that. Like, it was very practical and it was very simple. And I saw a change. And I think that's, you know, I just want to kind of do a little throwback here to the medical community where you get, you know, 10 minutes with your doctor and he prescribes a chemical. So not against all doctors. Doctors are amazing people. I know a lot of them. They're wonderful. And they mean so well, right? But what you're talking about is you're really going to listen. You're really going to find out what's going on with people. and then you're going to say, okay, let's go through your diet. You know, you're really going to spend much more time finding out specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I do some group programs that kind of are more blanketed and like here are things that everyone can try. And I have run one specifically on menopause and on self-care during menopause, and that's been very successful. But I almost always, even with a group program, make sure I do at least one-on-one with every client. And then if I'm working one-on-one with a client for kind of a broader scope, the initial assessment process that we go through is an hour and a half to 2 hours long, where we sit down one-on-one and we just go through everything. Like, what are the real factors in what's going on? And, you know, quite often we'll find that really what at the root of the imbalance is an emotional factor.
Yes.
And until we chronic acne, you know, I almost always find that there's an anger issue. Not to place blame on anyone, but, you know, especially women who are like in their 30s and they still have chronic acne, really bad skin, almost always there's an anger issue around their mother. So we have to really go back and heal that anger issue, or the emotional issue keeps things in place no matter what we do with food and what we do with herbs. And in some cases, that's not a factor, but we need to know, because we can keep intervening over and over and over on the physical level, and it doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? It's because there are these other factors that are keeping things in place. And we know that emotion can cause our physical bodies to change.
I love that you brought that up. And I'm so glad you did, because I didn't have that in my notes, but I'm like, oh my God, that's like so important, is the emotional factor. And this is the other thing I really like about Ayurvedic medicine, is that it takes everything into account. And so the emotional, I mean, this is a little case in point, but I had a really, really stressful day on Wednesday. I had a shoot that I had prepared for, that I was running the whole thing, and it was it was a really stressful day. It went really well, but it was very stressful. Do you know, Tuesday night, I woke up in the middle of the night with the worst sweats, the worst hot flash I've ever had. I mean, I literally was dripping. It was like running off of me.
Yep.
I haven't had a hot flash in like months, right? And then suddenly I'm like,
yeah. So let's explain that Ayurvedically. Like, that's such a great example. Stress increases the nervous system pressure. The nervous system pressure is like wind and ether. It's like it's very light. It's very volatile. It moves. Now, if there's some heat in the liver, think of it as a little flame. What happens when a wind meets a little flame? Think about the Santa Ana winds and a fire. Boom, the fire explodes and it moves throughout the body, and we experience intense heat. And why is it in the middle of the night? Because when we switch right around 2 a.m., we go into a cycle that is ruled by the nervous system. And so if the energy of the liver is hot, if Pitta dosha is hot, it pushes through into that 2 a.m. time. And all of a sudden we're drenched in sweat in the middle of the night, right between 2 and 4 a.m. One way that I work to assess clients is via pulse analysis. And just by feeling, not counting the pulses per minute, but we're feeling qualities, I can know right away, oh, hey, you have constipation. Hey, you wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. Hey, you experience acne as a youth, whatever it is. And so we have these objective measures which work at a deeper level than you just telling me symptomatically. Because you tell me you have a hot flash. Okay, great, you have a hot flash, but what is the cause? Is it the stress that's causing the hot flash? And some liver heat, some like heat in the body? Or is it really just there's too much heat, too much inflammation in the body? So that's two different things, and we'd want to rectify them in two different ways. If it's the stress, we have to do something about the stress in the nervous system. If it's inflammation, we have to do something about inflammation first, like that. So we need to prioritize the way that we're dealing with what's causing the symptoms in the body, in the skin, in the hormones, and in our whole self.
You know, I love that, because on set, you were doing that. You were like touching people's, wrist, and you were going, oh, you do, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, yeah, I mean, it was really interesting that you obviously are very well trained and can look at that. And you, of course, had me figured out from the get-go. And it was very helpful. And I mean, that to me, that's just such a, it's almost like woo woo, you know, like you can
It
actually
is,
feel
yeah,
someone's
yeah, yeah.
pulse and, you know, read how they are. Like, that's amazing.
Well, the one thing, it gives us so much information objectively that we can read. But the other thing that it does when we feel the pulses, and then I can tell you something about you, it engenders so much trust.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this person really understands. And I didn't even tell them that I had this or had this. But by knowing that, then all of a sudden you relax and you say, okay, this person can understand my unique physiology and not just treat it like someone else's physiology.
Yeah, and one of the points you brought up with me, and I think it's good to kind of bring this up too, because a lot of women going through menopause gain a lot of weight. And I
Ah,
gained like 25 pounds and it was crazy. And for somebody as type A as I am about my weight, that was like somebody just took a sledgehammer to me. Like it was really, really rough. I was really struggling. So when you felt my pulse and with the weight issue and with what was going on at home with my daughter, had some stress around my daughter, you said, oh, you're holding. So your body's going to hold that weight because you're holding space for your daughter to such a degree that your body won't release this extra weight. And I was like, oh my God, all the bells and whistles went off in my head. So I started really working at letting go of, because I overhold. I tend to overhold with people and situations. It's just my inner makeup, but it's also can be very unhealthy. And so I started really working at letting go, and the weight has really it has started to come off. So that's, I know.
that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And also, I think you, just by making that inner shift, it's not about like forcing yourself into a new diet
Right.
or trying to apply something from the outside. Oftentimes it's just, we need to make this shift. We have this realization, oh my God, I'm holding on in this very intense way and I need to let go. The body is always a metaphor. The body is always a metaphor for what's going on in the inner reality.
Yes. Yes, and that's what's so beautiful about this ancient technique is that it addresses all of that. And I think what's also good is that it respects and honors it. Like I never felt judgment from you at all. And I think I have emotion coming up because whenever I talk about my daughter's struggles, I feel oftentimes there's judgment automatically forced on it. And I think, no, stop judging. Like it's, like, come on. And so with you, that didn't sense that at all. And I love that about Ayurveda is that it's not going to judge. It's going to more look at it from a really great perspective.
Yeah, I'm always, and I think my teachings, how I've been taught is we're always trying to create space for more love.
Yeah.
So really, I'm just trying to hold this loving space for clients to evolve and to, offer assistance where I can. And so really that's the orientation. And when we just look at everything as energy, we can't judge it. That's the best the energy can do at this time. And it's not that we don't hope for something better in the future or that we aren't guiding it into a better state of balance, but we know that that's what it's appearing as right now. And in itself, that is beautiful because that is that soul's journey of learning in this lifetime.
And that is so beautiful and so like you're like glowing as you say that. Like it's just this glow without judgment. And our society has so much judgment, and especially judgment towards women and beauty. And I ought to know, this is my field, and I've been so entrenched in it. And I think what I want women to know, I feel like you automatically bring is that there's so much more going on here, and to really love and honor our bodies and honor where we're at and love who we are and love ourselves as we age and our hormones go all, bugger all over the place, like really having that lovely respect. And I feel like that's so much of what Ayurveda does.
Yeah. And, we really talk about in Ayurveda that there's outer beauty,
Right.
that there's inner beauty, and then there's lasting beauty.
Oh,
And we all know a woman or maybe more than one who's, like 85 or 70 or however old they are. And they just are beautiful. They have this
right.
internal radiance and this internal like sentiment that shines through, and they're absolutely beautiful.
Right.
And in fact, more beautiful than a younger woman with, tons of makeup and who has worked really hard. There's just this effortless grace. And that's really the grace of the soul shining through and the light of consciousness
Yes.
shining through, which is why when we talk about beauty in Ayurveda, the most important thing we can do is cultivate meditation,
Yes.
because that's the way we draw in more consciousness, and consciousness is always light and it's always love.
I love that you brought that up, and I'm kind of bummed we're almost out of time, but I love meditation. I think we talked about this. This is one of the things I talk about on my website and with videos is meditation is so powerful, and there's so many great meditations you can do for centering and to make peace with whatever is going on, or even to get in touch with what's going on. I mean, I'm sure a lot of women are like me. I am so like on the go, and my brain never stops, and I'm one of these people who lives in kind of overwhelm because I like it there, right?
Yeah.
And then I have a hard time figuring out what's going on. Like what is checking in with myself is like, I don't know. And meditation is the key to that. And I think then in a sense, it's the key to health.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is Ayurveda, which I really believe in. So, thank you so much for this. Every time I talk to you, I learn stuff, and I'm always like wanting to like have you over and just like, pick your brain for like another 4 days. Like, can we just talk about everything? Anyway, thank you for all this, Justine.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
Yes. And hopefully I can have you back and we can talk more, because I think this is super valuable. So thank you so much for joining me today on The Beauty Shaman.
Absolutely.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned for my next video on YouTube.